They said what happens at Diddy's parties stays at Diddy's parties. But over time, those whispers started leaking out like smoke from a locked door, impossible to contain and toxic once inhaled. The name Jaguar Wright has been floating through the industry for years, the woman who sings like fire and talks like she's got nothing left to lose. And now she's dropped a revelation that has everyone from Miami to Manhattan checking old texts and deleting old photos. According to Jaguar, those legendary freak-off nights weren't just wild, they were weaponized. The cameras were rolling, the guests were carefully chosen, and the consequences were lifelong. In her words, certain rappers, household names, left those parties carrying something far worse than regret. She calls it infection, but refuses to say exactly what that means. Disease, blackmail, a curse disguised as pleasure? Whatever it is, she swears it spread faster than anyone realized, and when she hints that she's sitting on proof, hidden footage, recorded confessions, and a list of names the industry prays never leaks, people start to panic. Because this isn't coming from a faceless blog or an anonymous Reddit thread, it's coming from someone who's been inside the machine, who's shared stages, studios, and secrets with the same people she's now calling out. When Jaguar Wright says rappers got infected after Diddy's parties, she's not talking about a cold or a hangover. She's talking about something that changed them, physically, mentally, and spiritually. She's hinted that what spread in those rooms wasn't just disease. It was control, a mix of temptation, manipulation, and exposure that left people unable to walk away without leaving a piece of themselves behind. Some fans think she's speaking literally, that she's referring to serious health consequences from unprotected chaos behind those mansion doors. Others think infection is her metaphor, a way of describing how the industry poisons its own to keep them obedient. Jaguar's words were chilling. They don't just catch something in those parties, they become something else. She describes scenes where people were filmed doing things they'd never admit to, acts that could destroy careers overnight. And according to her, that's the whole point. Once Diddy had the footage, he had the leverage. It wasn't just about pleasures, it was about power. It's the oldest play in the book: seduce, record, then own. And the more famous the name, the more valuable the secret. Jaguar claims that several rappers who once stood close to Diddy slowly began to distance themselves after these alleged parties. Sudden disappearances, cancelled collaborations, even quiet health breaks that fans never fully understood. She never said their names in full, but she's hinted at initials, cryptic clues, and timelines that point towards some of the biggest artists of the 2000s and 2010s. And when pressed on why she's speaking out now, her answer was cold and simple: because the infection's still spreading. He says it's not just about individuals anymore, it's about how corruption multiplies inside the industry, how silence protects predators, and how fear keeps stars from telling the truth. To her, this isn't revenge. It's a warning. But even warnings come with consequences, because once she started naming names, other voices began pushing back. Journalists, insiders, and even former friends began calling her out, saying she's exaggerating, that she's gone too far this time. Yet Jaguar refuses to back down. She claims there's more. Videos, witnesses, evidence that could destroy reputations in one night if ever released. And that's where things turn explosive, because the names she's connected to these freak-off tapes aren't just random celebrities. They're chart toppers, global icons, and some of them, she says, are still protecting the man who started it all. But before those names hit daylight, let's talk about how deep this rumor really runs, and why even the loudest denials haven't killed it yet. When Jaguar Wright finally started naming names, it felt like the internet stopped breathing for a second. She wasn't hinting anymore, she was spelling it out. In interviews and live streams, she claimed that the footage from those freak-off nights featured some of the biggest stars on the planet. She said artists like Drake, Justin Bieber, Rihanna, and Nicki Minaj were present in some of those tapes. According to Jaguar, these weren't innocent cameos. She alleged they were participants in events that got darker the deeper you looked. Now, to be clear, none of these celebrities have ever confirmed, acknowledged, or been proven to be part of anything she's described. In fact, several insiders called her out immediately, labeling her story as wild, delusional, and dangerous. But here's the thing. The more people denied it, the more traction it gained. Because in this industry, denial often sounds like damage control. Social media lit up with speculation. Old photos resurfaced, fan theories exploded, and people started rewatching interviews looking for signs. Clips of Diddy calling certain artists his brother or saying, "We go way back," suddenly felt loaded with new meaning. Even harmless party footage began to look suspicious. And then came the rumor that broke the internet, the claim that one of the most explicit tapes from those parties was sold on the dark web for $500 million, a single file. Jaguar said it contained footage of multiple artists together, and that powerful people were paying to make sure it never reached the public. Of course, no proof ever surfaced. No receipts, no leaks, just whispers, headlines, and a growing fear that maybe the reason we hadn't seen the evidence is because someone made sure we wouldn't. The backlash against Jaguar was immediate. Journalists like Toure called her out publicly, accusing her of trying to ruin lives and cash in on chaos. Others warned that she was playing a dangerous game, one that could end careers, or worse. But even as people dragged her name through the mud, Jaguar stayed defiant. She doubled down, claiming she wasn't after fame or clicks. She was after truth. In one interview, she said, "They can call me crazy all they want, but if I'm lying, why do they look so nervous?" And that question hit hard, because the more you listen, the more you start wondering, what if there's something here that really did happen? Something too risky, too valuable, too explosive to ever see the light of day. But Jaguar wasn't finished, because after dropping names, she dropped locations, court filings, references to hidden drives, even details about cases she says were quietly connected to Diddy's empire. That's when this stopped being just gossip and started brushing up against something far more serious: legal heat. At this point, you can't help but ask the question, how much of this is real? Because Jaguar Wright's story has everything: scandal, celebrities, and the kind of secrets that can destroy empires. But that's also what makes it dangerous. Skeptics argue that Jaguar's claims are too sensational, too unverified, and too perfectly timed. They say she's connecting dots that don't exist, feeding a machine that runs on shock value and clicks. And honestly, they might not be wrong, at least not entirely. There's no concrete proof of the so-called infection, no medical records, no verified footage, nothing that ties her claims to hard evidence the public can see. So far, everything lives in the space between what's possible and what's provable. But here's where things get tricky. While some of her claims sound outlandish, others align too closely with details from separate lawsuits, leaked documents, and first-hand accounts from people who once orbited Diddy's world. There's a pattern, one too detailed to ignore. The same kind of parties, the same stories of NDAs, cameras, and control. Different voices, same setting. Even her harshest critics admit one thing: Jaguar has nothing left to lose. She's not signed to a label, not chasing a comeback, not trying to sell a tell-all. She's standing in the open, daring the industry to call her bluff. And that's what makes her so unsettling, because people who have nothing to lose are often the ones who tell the truth, or burn everything trying. So maybe she's exaggerating, maybe she's confused, or maybe she's giving the world a glimpse into how power really operates behind the music we dance to. The truth might not be as extreme as her claims, but it might not be as far from them as people want to believe either. And that's the terrifying part, because if even one of her stories turns out to be true, then everything we thought we knew about fame, fortune, and loyalty in this business gets rewritten. But Jaguar's story doesn't end with doubt. It ends with a warning, one that forces everyone, fans and artists alike, to look in the mirror and ask, what's the price of staying silent? And who's still paying it? When the lights go out at the end of a party, everyone goes home, but the truth stays behind. And Jaguar Wright, she's standing in the dark, still talking when everyone else is whispering. Maybe she's lying, maybe she's exaggerating, or maybe she's the first one reckless enough to say out loud what others only joke about in private. Because the deeper you go into her story, the more you start realizing it's not just about Diddy. It's about the entire ecosystem that protects men like him. The contracts, the secrets, the way fame blinds us while corruption hides in plain sight. Jaguar might not have every receipt, but she's cracked something open. a conversation too uncomfortable for the mainstream to touch. And whether she's a prophet, a problem, or both, she's forcing people to ask, what do we really know about the people we worship? And what have they done to stay on top? In the end, the truth might not come from the courts or the headlines. It might come from the whispers, from the artists too scared to talk, the assistants who saw too much, the fans who finally start paying attention. So, believe her or don't, but understand this. Every empire built on silence eventually shakes. And when the music stops, the truth is the only sound left echoing in the room. If Jaguar Wright's right, this isn't just a scandal, it's a reckoning. And if she's wrong, then someone out there has gone to incredible lengths to make her look like she's telling the truth. Either way, the world's watching now, and somewhere, behind locked doors and expensive smiles, somebody's nervous. Because the infection she talked about, it might not be a virus, it might be the truth itself, spreading faster than anyone can contain.